Today we are going to make a little pancake brunch for lunch, and then we're also going to whip up a batch of banana muffins because my kids go back to school tomorrow. So let's start by getting the muffins kind of whipped up so that they can get into the oven and baking. So I have 3 very, very ripe bananas that we're going to hop in here. I'm going to give them a good squishy squish to kind of help with that mashing process before we put them in there. And then we'll squeeze them in. I like to say the browner or blacker the banana, the better, because it's going to be sweeter and more full of flavor. But you got to make sure they're like soft and mushy. Don't ever use a banana that's still good for like eating, like you're peeling and eating banana. Don't do that because those will give you really bland, awful banana bread or banana muffins. So we've got our bananas here, and I'm just going to go through with my fork here and give them a little mash. And then we're going to add in a cup of brown sugar because I'm going to do, again, just kind of like a winter spice on there. And just making sure I get most of those kind of big pieces kind of broken up. Now, once we add the brown sugar in, it will get nice and soupy because that sugar will start to dissolve and then kind of get that flavor going. And these are going to be sourdough, so we will use a half a cup of our sourdough discard in it. But we need 1 whole cup of our brown sugar in here. So that's a half a cup. And then the other half, do a little bit more since I didn't pack that one down much. Pop this over here since we're done with our brown sugar. And then we'll mix this together. And as it starts to incorporate again, it's going to get a little bit soupy. There we go. And then just kind of mash as you go. There. Perfect. Okay, I should be done with my fork now. And we'll get on with our spatula. Now, since we have our bananas in here, we don't need quite as much butter as I use in my regular muffin. So we only need 1/4 cup of melted butter. So we'll add that in, kind of mix it around. Again, I like to kind of smash my bananas into the side as I mix. Again, just to help break it down because I don't like to have too big of chunks of banana in my muffins. Give it a good stir here. Perfect. And then we're going to add in a half a cup of our sourdough discard, which is perfect because I need to start feeding up my sourdough so I can get back into making bread. It's like winter break is over, so it's time to get back into routines. I undecorated our house yesterday just to get back for the new year. It always feels like whenever you undecorate, because we kind of over decorate our house for Christmas, but it makes our house feel like it's naked because all the decorations are gone. But it also makes it feel very, very clean. So that's also nice, kind of gets you fresh. So we got a half a cup of our discard in here with our 1/4 cup of our butter, and we've got 3 mashed up bananas and a cup of brown sugar. And then we're going to add in 2 eggs. So 1, 2, and then let's pop those yolks. That way it's a little bit easier to incorporate. And we'll mix those egg yolks in, or those eggs, whole eggs, not just the yolks. And then we're going to add in our baking soda, salt, and spices, and vanilla. And then we'll have our muffins. I almost called these eggs. I'll have our banana muffins ready to go in to the oven to bake up. Okay. So let's start with our dry measurements first.
Aunt said she again.
Well, thank you, Aunt. We appreciate that. Let's start with our baking soda. So we're going to use a whole teaspoon of baking soda. This is going to be what gives our muffins their poof along with the eggs. Then for our cinnamon, we're going to use a tablespoon of cinnamon to really give us a great flavor because, again, we're kind of doing this nice winter spice to it. So there's our nice heaping tablespoon of cinnamon. And then we are going to use half a teaspoon of, not nutmeg, or half a teaspoon of cloves. And then half a teaspoon of allspice. Here we go. And then a fourth a teaspoon of nutmeg. If you don't like nutmeg, you can always omit it from here. Some people are not a fan of it, but I think just a pinch. I put it in my oatmeal cookies because I feel like it's a spice that adds that missing touch. And then we're going to use a half a teaspoon of salt. Let's mix these in. And then we're just on to our flour after that. But our spices are going to give this a nice dark color to our muffin and a wonderful smell. Kind of gives you that gingerbread smell to it, even though we didn't really put any ginger in it. But it's that cloves, that kind of just nice Christmas smell to it. But just a nice spiced banana bread. And get those mixed up. And now that we can do lots of our mixing now, but once we add our flour in, we want to minimize the mixing because, again, we want a nice fluffy muffin versus a stiffer, more dense muffin. And then we're going to add in a kind of heaping cup of flour. Let's add that in, and then we'll mix it in just until that flour is incorporated. Again, we don't want to over mix this. We don't want it to make it till it's smooth. We want a nice kind of lumpy batter because this is a butter-based batter, and over mixing will yield a denser, less fluffy muffin. Now, after we kind of have this kind of mixed in, if you want to add in, walnuts, chocolate chips, craisins, any, mix-ins to your muffins, now would be the time. I'm just going to keep mine plain and simple. That's my kids' favorite way. And that way it will be perfect for school since some of their kids' schools are a nut-free zone. There we go. Should be nice and mixed. Okay, let's get our muffin tin lined up. Now these will bake at 350 for 20 minutes. Now you could also do this in loaves and at 350 it would take a lot longer, like 45 minutes to do it in a loaf pan. I tend to like the muffins or the mini loaves better because I find that when you bake in a loaf, your edges dry out a lot more versus in the mini loaves. Let me grab a spoon. And then we're going to just start by scooping in each one, and then we'll go back and make it even. But I like to fill these up to the tops or as far as I can get my batter to go. Because there's no mix-ins with this, they're not going to be as big as when sometimes I'll add in walnuts or cranberries or other things to it, and that will increase the volume of the muffins. But today, they're just plain Janes. Here we go. Nice little scoop. And then we'll go back over and refill it. Then we'll get our bacon going. We'll work on our sourdough pancake batter. That way we can start working on breakfast while these bake up in the oven. It's like the last big breakfast before school starts back.
Yo has a question for you.
What's for dinner tonight? I am still kind of deciding. I have a beef chuck roast, but I'm deciding whether I'm going to do a roast with it or like do something a bit more fresh, like beef, shredded beef tacos. So I'm still, I've got some avocados and tomatoes, and I actually have a bunch of cilantro. So I might do that, but it has yet to be decided. We'll see how I feel later. Been trying, be healthy. I did my little Billy Blanks workout in today, so I might do the tacos to try to keep it fresh and do a little bit less rich of a dinner, but we'll see. That might change how the day goes. Yesterday the day went with let's have pizza for dinner, and we ordered takeout because I was undecorating, and I was like, you know what? It's always a little bit sad when you take all of the Christmas stuff down and you just feel like a little bit empty and the holiday magic is over. But at the same time, it's nice and refreshing to kind of get ready, prepared for the start of the new year. Okay, we've got these all things. I'm just going to grab a paper towel and kind of clean off so my little dripples don't bake on, which just makes it a little bit harder to clean later. A little extra work now makes it a little bit easier. Okay. And because let me wash my hands and then let's get these in the oven baking. Again, these bake at 350 for about 20 minutes. And they'll be nice and delicious. They're just our basic spiced banana muffins. Slide those guys in. And we'll set our timer for 20 minutes. Okay, let's get our bacon going, starting cooking up. Then we'll work on our sourdough pancake batter, which I find makes the fluffiest pancakes. And they're just so delicious. Although I will say, when I make my sourdough pancakes camping, it makes them even fluffier. And I don't know how it's more fluffy camping than they are here. And I think maybe it's because it's like 90 degrees outside and the sourdough is just working double time. But my camping, same recipe. It's the same recipe, just twice as fluffy camping. Must be cooking over propane or something like that. Okay, let's get our bacon going. We got some good applewood smoked bacon. My kids love bacon. It's funny. So, like growing up, it was like you didn't have both. You either had bacon or you had sausage, and my family was just always the sausage person. So I rarely had bacon growing up. And it wasn't until my husband, they were like a bacon family, and I do both because half my kids like sausage, half of them like bacon. But I realized that bacon is delicious, and I don't know why we were purely a sausage family. And we were a large enough family that we could have done bacon and sausage. Okay, let's get our bacon going. I'm going to start it up high. Once it sweats out a little bit of its fat, we'll turn it down low, and I'll just do my crazy fry on it because I find it just works the best.
You have a question? Do you ever get tired of cooking?
Not really. I really enjoy cooking. It's kind of like my passion. It's like my love. So I don't ever really get tired of it. Now, I also really like to change up what I'm cooking all the time so that I'm never cooking the same thing. Back when I was, working out of the home instead of doing some consulting that I do now, there was more monotony of cooking the same things and getting things out. But now I have a little bit more freedom to change it up, and I'm not rushed as much. And so I really, really enjoy that. Okay, for our sourdough pancakes, we're going to start off with a half a cup of our sourdough discard. Let's get a spatula out. I'm going to scrape the goodness out because we don't want to waste any in here. And then I'm just making, because we have so much, this is going to make about 12 pancakes. But these are filling pancakes. So, got a little discard on me. Then we're going to add in 3/4 cup of milk. And we're going to just essentially dilute that discard into the milk. There we go. And you want to use, if you use a starter, so you want to use discard because it will give you more of that sourdough flavor. If you have just fed it, it will have less of that sourdough flavor because, it will be more watered down with your flour. And also depending how many feet, length between your last feeding, the stronger. So if you haven't fed your starter in 3 days, you'll have a much stronger sourdough flavor. Okay, we've got that mixed in. We're going to add in 2 tablespoons of melted butter. Give it a good mixy mix. And then 1 egg. We're going to poke that yolk. And we're going to mix it up. And I'm actually going to turn on my griddle and let it start warming up because it takes a hot minute for that to get there. But let's mix our egg well until it's completely mixed up. I'm going to kind of smash it around. Here we go. And then we are going to add in a teaspoon of baking powder and a half a teaspoon of baking soda. So both of these are going to give us the poof in that makes them extra fluffy. So 1 teaspoon of baking powder, and then a half a teaspoon of baking soda. And then we're going to add in our vanilla. We're also going to add in a teaspoon of vanilla, which gives it just a lovely kind of a slightly sweetened flavor to it. We'll just mix that in now since I've got my teaspoons out. Let's mix this in. And the baking soda and the baking powder are going to react with your sourdough discard, which will help make this kind of a really fluffy batter. It's always good to let it sit for a minute or two before you start cooking your pancakes because that will allow it to get even fluffier. Okay, we're going to add in a pinch of salt and then a cup of flour. Oh, before we add our cup of flour, I got to grab my sugar. I need to get my regular sugar out. But before we do that, let me toss our bacon, and then I'm going to turn it down just a little bit. But it's starting to sweat, so I'm going to turn it down to our medium temperature and give it a little thing. And now I'm going to grab my regular sugar because we need 2 tablespoons of regular sugar to give just a little bit of sweetness to our pancakes. I like a little bit of sweetness because I just think it fills it out nicely. But you don't need a lot, just about 2 tablespoons into our batter. And then we can add our flour. So let's mix that in first. There we go. And you can see how light, we haven't even added it in, but how light and fluffy it is in there. And then we're going to add in our flour for this. We just need 1 cup. There we go. Make sure, get rid of any pockets. And that is the base to our pancakes. Now, resist the urge to mix this batter super smooth. You want it nice and lumpy. That's going to give you a lighter, fluffier pancake. There we go. Beautiful. So just mix it until that flour is incorporated, but no more. Perfect. We'll let that sit for a second as those kind of chemical reactions between the baking soda and the discard and the baking powder kind of occur, which makes it more fluffy. Give our bacon a nice little toss here.
So you have a question, where do you get the containers for the flour from?
So I got those on Amazon. I actually have them in my Amazon storefront. I love them. The nice thing about them is they each come with these little measuring cups, which have cups, ounces and milliliters on it. And I will say that is just wonderful when you're baking, especially if you're using a lot of different recipes. I love them, and I just can keep them in there. But yeah, I love that I have them in there. Um, and in the South, and I don't know if there are other places, but you can get pantry moths, which are like the worst. But they like come and they eat like little packages, and they'll be in like flour and whatnot. So I try to keep everything in my pantry in an airtight container so that I don't have pantry moths. There we go. So we're gonna melt this. I've got my griddle nice and hot here. And we'll start getting our pancakes nice and fluffy here. I am a person who I just love a nice little butter edge on my pancakes. So I always put butter between every batch of pancakes because it just makes a nicer pancake. There we go. Let's get our bacon. Nice. We'll turn it up just a smidge. And once this butter is nice and melted, we will put our first batch of pancakes to cook down. And then we can work on our strawberries and our golden kiwis for a little fruit bowl. And then we'll scramble up our eggs on here. Looking good. Okay, let's grab a nice thin spatula. Okay, so I'm just going to grab a little dollop on here. And I just kind of give it a little help to spread it out so that I don't get too fat of a pancake because then it takes longer to cook. Now, the trick is don't cook your pancake on too high of temperature because you need it to steam cook all the way through. And if you have your temperature too high, you'll get a dark brown pancake before you've cooked the insides. There we go. So give it a little spread out. And I have mine cooking right now over a 4. I'll know when to flip once I start to see some bubbles kind of popping up through. But typically, the first batch of pancakes always takes so much longer than every other batch because your griddle is not nice and hot yet. There we go. Give our bacon a little toss. Now, I always call this is my kind of crazy fry bacon. This is the way we've always done it growing up. I know lots of people love to do it in the oven, but I just love my bacon pan fried, crispy, kind of crazy looking, just delicious on there. My kids love it that way as well. Let's get our strawberries rinsed. We're going to slice these up and have those with our some golden kiwis on here. And then we should be able to flip our first batch of pancakes. Now, if you wanted to put like some blueberries in your pancakes or chocolate chips, right now what you do while they're like halfway there, you could push a couple blueberries in, and then when you flip them, they'd be, you cooked right in there as the batter. I find that's the best way to do it instead of stirring them. If you have some people who love blueberries pancakes or M&M pancakes or chocolate chip pancakes, you don't have to commit the whole batch of pancakes to it. All right, let's get our strawberries going on here and slice those up for it. They were such a good sale on strawberries. They were like 2 for $5. Now, it's not as nice as when you get to the summer and you get strawberries for like $1.25 a carton because they're in season and they're like the best. But I will take some nice strawberries. They're pretty deep red too. They're not the completely pale white strawberries that you get sometimes at this time of year. When my kids were little and we used to get the strawberries and they would be like so white inside, I was like, oh, and that was when Frozen was big. I was like, oh, Elsa froze these strawberries. Let's add a little sugar to sweeten them up. There we go. So we've got 2 more strawberries left. That one's past its prime. Okay, we've got our strawberries here. I'm going to sprinkle them with a little bit of sugar. When I say a little bit, you need less than a teaspoon. It will bring out the natural sweetness of the strawberries because it forces them to sweat, which releases their juices, and it really enhances their flavor, which is perfect when your strawberries aren't in peak season. So we'll sprinkle a little bit of them and give them a nice toss, and that just gives you a much nicer one. You don't need a lot. It's just the smallest amount, but that little bit of sugar causes them to sweat out their juices, which enhances their flavors. Okay, our bacon is looking good. Let's see what our pancakes are looking at here. We're starting to get a little bit, but I can tell we're still nowhere near ready yet. Almost. I'm gonna give it a little bit higher. Let's get this going. Make sure. I always say, once we get through that first batch, it does take a hot minute for it. But let me grab my little sprinkle of sugar here. And just a little tiny bit. All you need will coat it up, but it will sweat it out and it will give you a nicer tasting strawberry. And then we'll get our things up. Our bacon should be ready soon, so we can pop in our sausages and just crisp those up. And then we'll get our eggs going. There we go. And the trick with your bacon when you do a pan fry is you don't want to cook it on too high of temperature or you'll burn your bacon. You start high to get that initial sweat out so you have some good grease to do it, but then you turn it down to about a medium. And then you stir it every so often so that, again, you're cooking it as evenly as possible, but not over too high of heat. And I'm just trying to break it apart and lay each piece as flat as possible so it can kind of boil up in its own grease or fry up in its own grease. Okay. Got our strawberries kind of coated, and you can actually see they're starting to glisten and shine. That just little bit of sugar just really does a good amount of sweating here. Okay, let's get our golden kiwis here. If you've never had a golden kiwi, they are not as tart as a regular kiwi. They're smoother on the outside. Their skin is smoother, and they're a little bit sweeter. My kids really love golden kiwis. They cost about the same. You can get them at Costco, a couple other places. You still want to peel that skin because like a regular kiwi, it is a little thicker, but they look essentially the exact same, just golden. If you ask Teddy, he says they taste like a banana. Nobody else agrees with that assessment, but there's Teddy's 2 cents for it. Okay, let's see. I think we're getting our first round through on here. Okay, this one looks like he's about ready. On there. Perfect. And then we'll let that kind of cook up. I always kind of look and give them a little peek as you go. You could see they're starting to kind of bubble up and then go there. Now that my griddle is nice and hot, my rounds, my next couple rounds will go a lot faster. There we go. Okay. You got to get that first round down. Let me get a plate for this so we can slide those off. Make our, the Paul Bunyan stack of pancakes. And I think I'm going to need to get my paper towel for my bacon because it's just about ready for it to slide off as well. Perfect. I always know when my bacon is right around the end of being fried is you'll start to see this white foam come up out of it. That means it's kind of minimizing the amount of liquid is left in that fat. And so it's kind of foaming up there because there's less of it. And that allows it to kind of crisp up a little bit more. You're getting towards the end once you start to see that. You don't see that in the beginning as much. So we'll get that for our bacon here. Beautiful. Start to pull this off. Lovely. And then, give each piece a nice little spot on the paper towel. I'll let it sit there, soak up that extra fat. Of course, the cameraman is sliding it towards him. I'm going to warn him that it's very, very hot, and he will not want to eat it right away. I'll pop in some sausages. Now, these are already pre-cooked, but my kids love them when I just saute them up in a little bit of that bacon grease. I'm going to turn my temperature down really low because you don't need much to warm them through and give them a nice crispy edge. Okay, let's check our pancakes. There we go. You see how much faster they cook on that second side now that my griddle is nice and hot. So we've got our first round of pancakes going in. We'll add our little butter coating because I told you I love my butter going on there. I'm going to turn my temperature down now that I know that it's nice and hot. And look how like bubbly. You see how airy this is? That's how light and fluffy these pancakes are going to be. And a little love, spreading it out. Perfect. Now you can always make one big giant pancake when I'm camping because I don't have my griddle pan with me and I'm over a small thing. I make just one big giant pancake at a time, and maybe that's why the kids just really love those pancakes. But you can do that as well. There we go. Give this a little rotate, and these should cook up a lot faster on there. Oh, well, before we slice this guy up, let's go grab our muffins out of the oven. Those are our banana muffins we spiced with cinnamon, cloves, allspice, splash of nutmeg. Give them a nice little tap. Yep, they're all done. Beautiful. And these also have our sourdough discard in them, but delicious. And these are just plain, no nuts or cranberries in them. Sometimes I add those in them. You could add chocolate chips in here as well, but we kept them just simple today. Perfect for our kids when they go back to school. So nice and simple. Yeah. But again, brown sugar, cinnamon, cloves, allspice, a little bit of nutmeg really adds just those lovely flavors so that, it's just got a nice warm spiciness to them. So slightly different than your regular banana muffins. Okay, we got our bacon flipped over, so those are just about done. Sausage. We got our sausage flipped over, just about done. Okay, let's get our next golden kiwi peeled and sliced, and then we can flip our pancakes because they'll flip much faster now that our griddle is nice and hot. Here we go. Wash my hands. Let's see. You should be just about ready to flip. Perfect. See how much faster this second round cooks? Yeah, there we go. Gorgeous. And I'm cooking these right now on like a 2.5. So nice and low and slow because you want them to kind of steam up and cook on the inside, but they're going to be very light and fluffy and absolutely delicious. Let's get one more golden kiwi in here. I always like to find ones that have a slight little smush to it because those I find are the ripest, not that one. Here we go. We'll give it a peel. And then our fruit bowl will be ready. And then we can take our sausages out. We'll get rid of a little bit of our bacon grease, but then we'll scramble up our eggs and the remaining bit of them.
Oh, Mary sent you.
Thank you, Mary. We appreciate that. So there are our golden kiwis and our strawberries. I'm gonna steal the bacon back from the cameraman because if I leave it over there for too long, there won't be any left. Okay, and take our sausages out, but just cooking them in that bacon grease, it not only warms them up, but just gives them a nice kind of crispy edge to them, which my kids just absolutely love.
You have a question. Are you making any fresh sourdough bread today?
I'm not going to bake it up, but I am going to be feeding up my sourdough because we used our discard here so that I can make some more tomorrow on there. Yesterday was kind of my day off from cooking because I kind of undecorated our house for Christmas, which always is a bigger job than you think because I keep forgetting how many tubs of Christmas decorations I have. And the best part is I go through it and then my husband's like, I'm not putting them up today. I'm not putting them up today. And they go up into our attic, which is like on this like flimsy little ladder that you have, the ones that you pull down from the ceiling. And, he's like, don't overload the tubs. And I'm like, I won't. The tubs every time. I'm like, it's good exercise, nice and strength, putting in there. I was like, well, you've been doing Billy Blanks with me. You should be prepared for this.
What's the best flour to use for sourdough?
I like to use just, an unbleached bread flour. Costco makes a great variation of it, King Arthur. Honestly, as long as it's unbleached, I don't think you can go wrong with it. I'm like a big fan of use what you have around the house. Look how nice and fluffy these are. You don't have to run out and buy the specialty flours. You don't have to spend a lot of money to get great stuff. And so what you have works well. Now, the reason I say it needs to be unbleached is because the bleaching process kills the natural yeast in flour. And when you do that, then your sourdough won't rise as well because it's been, the yeast has been killed. And so it really needs to be, unbleached. But, you can even, in a pinch, I've also used all-purpose flour to make my sourdough bread, which gives you a kind of more holy, like a crumb to it. So they all have like their different properties to it and on there. But I find that they all taste great and amazing on there. Let's get these next batch cooking out, and then we'll get our eggs going. Okay, now I've got my little bit of my bacon grease left in here. Actually going to squeeze out, get a little bit more out. I don't like to have it too much in there, but I do want a little bit for flavor. So just take like a paper towel, soak some out like this. This is what I find is the best way to get rid of it. And there we go. That way you have a little bit in there, so you'll have some great flavor, but you're not going to have, too much where you have extra greasy eggs. And let me get a little splash of butter because I know it sounds crazy, but I do like the mixture of butter and bacon grease in there, which is why I take out a little bit. But that milk solids, you can't beat that kind of salty flavor of the milk solids in there. So there's about a half a teaspoon of butter with our things. And then we're just going to do a simple scramble today because it tends to be my kids' favorite. And I should tell you, I'm terrible at flipping eggs. When I say that, I haven't scrambled these eggs, so maybe we'll do fried eggs. You know what? I'm feeling bold today. Let's do fried eggs. I'm going to turn it up just a bit. I didn't break any of my yolks cracking them, so we'll do them. I always say I'm terrible at it, so I don't just do sunny side up fried eggs where you could easily put like a lid over it, steam them, help them get there. I like mine over easy where you got to flip them over. But the problem is when you flip them over, you have to be a little bit more gentle, a little bit smoother. And if you know me, I'm not the gentlest one. I've got like Hulk hands over here. You know, I've broken like half my spatulas and tongs in here. We're going to sprinkle a little bit of salt over each one. But this is my oldest daughter loves a fried egg. I love a fried egg. That's my favorite way to do it. It's so funny when some of my kids, they love to the little ones love to just poke them, but then they'll eat them, you know, in various parts. Like Evie loves the whites, but she doesn't eat the yolks. So it's always fun which kids like what parts of the fried eggs. We're going to turn it up just a little bit more. I'm going to rotate because my pan gets a little bit hot on one side. And you know what? For those, because I have a couple kids who like a blueberry pancakes, I'm going to show you what you can do if you want a few blueberry pancakes. I'm going to rinse a couple blueberries, and then we'll pop some in there because these are nice, kind of puffy. So if you want blueberry pancakes, but you don't want to commit a whole batch to it, just take them and pop a few in. Make sure you push them in nicely so that, you know, they get coated up. And you can have it. You can do this with chocolate chips as well, M&Ms on there. And so you can actually have as many different types of pancakes as you want, but you can just change it up for there. Okay, let's see how these are looking. Almost ready. This guy is floating a little bit south. We'll have to push him a little bit closer. Let me grab a smaller spatula for this one, because with this, my big honkin' one, I won't be as delicate with it. Let's see. I'm going to start to make my little slices in it for doing my eggs over easy, which means you flip them and you fry them on the other side for about 30 seconds. That just gets to where you've got a nice little crust going over it. You have to be gentle with it, and the flipping and the turning one, you got to make sure you've cut each one nicely. Again, you could always just put a lid over it and steam it, but that quick fry on the other side just gives you so much more flavor. Here, we'll flip these over. Let's see how this guy is. I think he needs a little bit more. He does. He was hanging out on the far end of my skillet. So my griddle pan is bigger than my burner, so I always just do 3 in the middle because I want them to cook up evenly, instead of if you do farther out, then your pancake kind of goes half and half. But I do love the round griddle pan because, you know, normally they make those big long square or rectangle ones. And the problem with that is if you have a gas burner, you typically don't have 2 burners that are the exact same size. And so that's kind of a problem with the rectangle ones, because then you have 2 different heats on it and they don't cook up as well. I'm going to turn down my heat for this last part so it slow cooks on there. And then we can get there we go. Our eggs are going. So egg 1. And we have safely maneuvered egg 2. And this is for your sunny side, or your eggs over easy. There we go. Did that with my non-dominant hand, guys. So just telling you. Skill. And get this middle guy. Save. And almost. Last one failed. Turn your heat off once you flip them over. Slide it off. That way you don't overcook them. But it's pretty good, almost all of them. Almost. Can't win them all. Let's get ready to serve up our breakfast here. Since our last bit of pancakes are almost done. And we've got quite the breakfast feast here. Okay. And always remove your eggs off of it because you don't want to keep them on that heat because they'll cook up really, really fast. So let's start. So I'm going to turn off this one because these pancakes are about done. For breakfast today, we have our eggs over easy where we cook them up. Let's slide them on here. We'll serve that with our crazy pan-fried bacon, our sausages cooked in our bacon grease. We have our strawberries, our fresh strawberries, and our golden kiwis. Some nice fresh fruit. But the star of the show are our gorgeous, delicious, fluffy sourdough pancakes that we will drizzle with some maple syrup on there. And then they're nice and fluffy and puffy for delicious. And then we also made a batch of our spiced banana muffins that are just so soft and tender and delicious. Look at that. But they are great for the kids for their lunches this week. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day to kind of show you what we're making for our family and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page. So if you ever want to recreate any of these recipes at home, you can just go to our page and search for what we made. So our sourdough pancakes, banana muffins, and you can always watch and cook along with me again. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all of our cooking gear and gadgets. I've got my griddle pan, my Hexclad pan, my knives, cutting boards, all the different things that I use in my kitchen I have in there for you guys to check out. But again, thank you so much for joining us.